We've all heard the thunderclaps of Jeane Dixon's 2025 prophecies. The earthquakes, the wars, the economic crashes echoing through headlines like a drumbeat of dread. Yet beneath these cataclysmic forecasts, something far more chilling lies, buried, waiting. A prophecy not of collapsing cities, but of collapsing souls. While the world fixates on fire and ruin, Dixon's most intimate warning whispers of a spiritual rot festering within humanity itself, a silent, creeping catastrophe ignored in the shadow of spectacle. Why has this profound dimension of her vision been drowned out? Why do we flinch at falling buildings but turn deaf ears to the crumbling of faith, the erosion of meaning? The answer terrifies. It's easier to fear the bomb than the void it leaves in the human spirit. Dixon didn't just predict disaster. She foresaw a crisis of the unseen, a great unraveling of morality, a hemorrhage of collective hope, a karmic reckoning for centuries of spiritual neglect. Imagine it. Not just bodies in rubble, but souls adrift in a wasteland of their own making. The ticking clock isn't just counting down to geopolitical chaos, it's counting down to the moment humanity confronts its own hollow core. This isn't mere mysticism. It's a psychological and sociological ghost story written in the ink of prophecy. The haunting truth: physical disasters end. But a soul-scarring, faith-shattering collapse that lingers, that rewrites civilizations. That's the true apocalypse hiding in plain sight within Dixon's words. So ask yourself, as the whispers grow louder and the clock ticks toward midnight, what if the greatest threat isn't the world ending, but us? Jeane Dixon's 2025 prophecy isn't merely a forecast of external ruin. It's a chilling autopsy of the human soul, dissecting 4 distinct plagues poised to rot us from within. A true apocalypse whispered not in seismic rumbles, but in the silent collapse of meaning. First, the Great Silence. Dixon foresaw not just dwindling congregations, but a tsunami of faith abandonment, leaving behind a suffocating vacuum where purpose once resided. This isn't passive secularism, it's an active hemorrhage of collective meaning, a spiritual amnesia gripping millions. Listen closely. Can you hear the fading echoes of hymns replaced by the hollow static of despair? Look around. The epidemic of anxiety isn't just clinical, it's existential. The rising tide of the nones, the religiously unaffiliated, isn't a demographic shift. It's a mass migration away from ancient anchors, leaving souls adrift in a sea of unanswered questions. Pop culture screams this void, films drenched in nihilism, music throbbing with alienation, a collective shudder at the abyss. It's the sound of a cosmic choir fading, note by note, into an unnerving, infinite static, a silence so profound it deafens the spirit. This is Dixon's first Horseman, not war, but desolation. Yet from this vacuum blooms Dixon's second terror, the rot within. When shared belief crumbles, the mortar-binding society dissolves. She predicted an insidious erosion, trust evaporating like morning dew, family bonds snapping like rotten threads, basic ethics discarded like yesterday's trash. Rampant selfishness becomes the new creed, corruption, the operating system. This isn't mere political division, it's a cancer of the collective spirit. Witness the hyperpolarization tearing nations limb from limb, where the other side isn't disagreed with, but dehumanized. Feel the post-truth era's slimy grip, where facts are fungible and reality bends to whim, breeding a pervasive, poisonous distrust. Institutions, pillars meant to shelter us, crack and splinter under the weight of relentless scandals. Community, a fading myth. The soundscape here isn't silence. It's a cacophony turning toxic, the murmur of a crowd curdling into angry, dissonant shrieks punctuated by the sharp, sickening shatter of breaking social contracts. This is moral decay, not as abstract concept, but as visceral, festering reality. The Horsemen. Corruption, feasting on the ruins of trust. But Dixon, ever the cosmic moralist, warned this inner decay wouldn't go unpunished. Enter the third spectre, the Karmic Reckoning. She envisioned humanity's collective sins, generations of greed, gnawing at the planet, violence staining history, profound neglect of the vulnerable and the sacred, finally triggering an unavoidable backlash. Not divine wrath in the simplistic sense, but a fundamental law of consequence snapping back. The universe, she implied, keeps brutal accounts. See the echoes now? The climate crisis isn't random weather. It's the screaming invoice for centuries of ecological plunder, a fevered planet demanding payment, social unrest exploding in city streets. Not just politics. It's the violent tremor of inequality's fault line finally rupturing. Pandemics sweeping the globe. They feel like nature's grim response to disrupted balances and encroached wilds. A biological bill coming due. The sound here is primal, the distant, ominous thunder of approaching consequence, underscored by a low, resonant drumbeat, the heartbeat of a wounded earth, or perhaps the impatient footfall of cosmic justice. This horseman is retribution, inevitable and terrifyingly impersonal. Finally, amidst this accelerating inner darkness, Dixon prophesied the thinning veil. Moments of piercing, profound spiritual clarity or intervention clashing violently against the escalating gloom. It's the prophecy's most ambiguous, electrifying element. Will it be divine light breaking through, or merely chaotic, unfiltered psychic energy unleashed? The modern echoes are schizophrenic, terrifyingly beautiful. Witness the explosion of interest in the mystical, astrology apps topping charts, psychedelic journeys seeking transcendence, ancient practices revived not as hobbies, but as desperate lifelines. Reports of mass awakenings ripple through digital networks, sudden shifts in consciousness, moments of blinding unity or empathy. Yet, simultaneously, extremism metastasizes, fundamentalism's hardening, radical altruism morphing into fanaticism, the search for meaning, twisting into dangerous dogma. It's a spiritual bipolarity, pure crystalline chimes of potential enlightenment, instantly drowned by chaotic, overlapping screams of confusion and zealotry. Is this the universe offering salvation, or simply the pressure cooker of despair blowing its lid? Dixon's final horseman is revelation. But whether it reveals grace or merely the abyss staring back, she left hauntingly unclear. This is the core terror. The veil is thinning. Are we glimpsing heaven? Or are we finally seeing the monstrous reflection of our own collective soul in the cosmic mirror? The prophecy suggests 2025 isn't just a date. It's a spiritual tipping point where our inner apocalypse becomes undeniable. A reckoning not with gods or asteroids, but with the terrifying, beautiful, and potentially monstrous potential coiled within the human spirit itself. The true catastrophe isn't out there. It's the dark symphony we're composing within, movement by damning movement, and the curtain may rise for the final act far sooner than we dare believe. What if we are not just the victims of this prophecy, but its architects? And what if the ghost we fear most is our own collective shadow, grown vast and ravenous in the silence we cultivated? The whispers aren't just in Dixon's dusty prophecies anymore. They're screaming from our headlines, vibrating in our collective unease. Is this it? Are the rising tides of anxiety, the fault lines of fury cracking through society, the desperate, scrolling searches for something more, not just symptoms of a stressed age, but the first tremors of Dixon's 2025 spiritual earthquake? The ground beneath our souls feels unstable, porous, thinning. To understand if we're living the prelude, we turn to voices speaking from the shadows. A chorus of experts offered anonymity, not out of fear, but to pierce the noise with raw, unfiltered insight. Listen closely. First, the psychologist, their voice clinical yet laced with profound disquiet. Look beyond the DSM diagnoses. This epidemic of anxiety, depression, the crushing weight of why bother? It's not merely chemical. It's the scream of the unanchored soul. We've discarded communal rituals, shared sacred narratives, the spiritual scaffolding that held generations aloft during storms. What Dixon called a vacuum of despair. We're clinically documenting its suffocating effects. The human psyche isn't built for this existential freefall. The silence after faith isn't peaceful. It's deafening, and it's driving us mad. Their words hang heavy, a clinical confirmation of spiritual starvation. Then, cutting through the haze of data, the sociologist, analyzing our fractured world with chilling precision. Polarization, distrust. Don't mistake these for mere political disagreements. This is Dixon's moral decay metastasizing in real time. Hyperpolarization is societal autoimmune disease, the body attacking itself because it no longer recognizes its own parts as self. The post-truth era isn't about lies. It's about the utter erosion of shared reality, the bedrock of trust. Scandals eroding institutions. That's the visible rot. The invisible rot is the death of the social contract, the evaporation of the belief that the other deserves basic decency. We aren't just divided, we're morally dislocated. This isn't politics. It's prophecy manifesting as societal pathology. It's a damning indictment. The rot within isn't coming. It's here, feasting. Seeking deeper meaning in the chaos, the theologian-philosopher offers a graver perspective, their voice resonating with ancient echoes. The crisis of meaning, Dixon foresaw, is the defining malady of our secular age. We killed God, Nietzsche proclaimed, but forgot we needed something to fill the throne. Now we wander a marketplace of hollow substitutes, consumerism, digital validation, curated identities, all ringing utterly empty. The desperate surge. In neo-mysticism, the obsessive self-help quests, the yearning for transcendence in psychedelics or extreme experiences, these aren't trends. They're the death throes of a species gasping for sacred air in a materialist vacuum. We are, quite literally, dying for a story larger than ourselves, a reason to endure the coming storm. This searching isn't hopeful. It's the frantic scratching at a locked spiritual door. Their words paint a stark landscape, a civilization lost in a desert of its own making, thirsting for a mirage. Finally, cutting through the intellectual analysis like a shard of ice, a modern seer speaks, their voice hushed, almost trembling. The energy. It's not just shifting. It's fracturing. Can you feel it? The pressure building? Like tectonic plates grinding beneath the surface of consciousness. Dixon didn't just predict events. She sensed a tipping point in the human spirit itself. 2025 isn't arbitrary. It's a convergence point, a moment where the weight of our collective choices, the greed, the fear, the abandonment of the sacred, could cause something fundamental to snap. The awakenings, they're real, flashes of light in the gathering dark. But so is the escalating shadow. The veil isn't just thin now, it's tearing. This isn't analysis, it's an intuitive alarm bell, ringing directly from the psychic landscape Dixon once navigated. So, stand amidst the roaring headlines, the climate disasters that feel like planetary screams, the geopolitical tantrums threatening nuclear winter, the viral tides of hate and hope crashing online. Feel the pervasive dread, the simmering rage, the gnawing void. Are these merely the woes of a complex world? Or are they the gathering storm clouds Dixon described, the unmistakable precursors to a spiritual cataclysm? The mysterious benefactors point, with unnerving consensus, towards the latter. The psychologist sees souls breaking under meaninglessness. The sociologist diagnoses societal suicide via moral decay. The theologian observes a civilization gasping for transcendence. The seer senses the very fabric of collective spirit straining towards rupture. The evidence isn't just in dusty books. It's in our trembling hands, our fractured communities, our screen-lit faces searching the digital void for a glimmer of why. The veil is thin, and what bleeds through isn't divine light. Yet, it's the chilling confirmation. The spiritual apocalypse isn't approaching. We're already stumbling through its opening act. The question Dixon forces upon us is no longer speculative, it's horrifyingly immediate. How much thinner can the veil get before the darkness floods in completely? Or worse, before we realize, the darkness isn't coming from outside, but through the cracks we've willingly opened within ourselves. The prelude isn't playing. The first movement of the inner apocalypse has already begun. Can we change the score before the finale? But hold. Before we drown in the prophetic undertow, a jolt of cold reason, the skeptic's scalpel slicing through the gloom. Is any of this real? Or are we merely performing a macabre séance with our own anxieties, conjuring Dixon's ghost to haunt the cracks we've already sensed? The chilling truth is this. Narratives of moral decay are humanity's oldest ghost story. Every crumbling empire, from Rome's excesses to Victorian fears of degeneracy, heard the same whispers of societal rot. The prophets always cry wolf, and the wolf is always us, reflected in a funhouse mirror of perpetual decline. Are we truly facing Dixon's unique spiritual apocalypse? Or are we just another terrified generation mistaking our existential growing pains for the end times? The haunting possibility lingers. Fear sells, and souls are infinitely more complex than prophecies. Blunt instruments can dissect. This isn't just cynicism, it's historical fact echoing in the chamber of our dread. Projection is a powerful spell. We plaster Dixon's vague, decades-old pronouncements onto the Rorschach blots of modern crises, mistaking coincidence for confirmation. Climate change becomes Karmic Reckoning. Political discord morphs into the rot within. The search for meaning in a chaotic universe, proof of the thinning veil. The pattern fits because we force it to fit. And Dixon herself, the supposed oracle, her record is a minefield of misses buried beneath a few sensational hits. Remember her confident prediction of World War III erupting in 1958, or the miraculous cure for cancer arriving in 1967? The child born in the Middle East who would bring world peace by 2020. Silence hangs where fulfillment should roar. Focusing, laser-like on her spiritual warnings, feels suspiciously convenient. Like retreating into a sacred fog where proof evaporates. Earthquakes can be measured, stock markets crash visibly, but how do you falsify a crisis of the soul? How do you disprove karmic backlash? It's the ultimate escape hatch for prophecy. When physical events fail to align, pivot to the invisible, the intangible, the realms beyond quantification. The spiritual becomes prophecy's impenetrable fortress, immune to evidence. Is this depth, or just a sophisticated dodge? The skeptic's voice grows sharper. Isn't the true manipulation claiming insight into the unfathomable depths of billions of individual spirits? Reducing the vast, messy tapestry of human belief, doubt, despair, and resilience to four tidy horsemen feels less like revelation and more like dangerous oversimplification, a horror story we tell ourselves, to make chaos feel ordered, terrifying, destined. Yet the skeptic's cold water doesn't extinguish the eerie chill entirely. Acknowledging Dixon's flaws and the timelessness of decay narratives doesn't magically dissolve the specific intensity of our current moment. The psychologist's data on despair is real. The sociologist's charts of polarization spike off the page. The theologian's diagnosis of a meaning vacuum resonates with aching familiarity. The skeptic forces a crucial grounding question. Is Dixon causing the fear or merely channeling a fear already boiling within us? The prophecy might be flawed, a Rorschach blot, but the terror it reflects is undeniably potent. A dark electricity, arcing through the collective psyche. Perhaps the haunting truth isn't that Dixon saw the future, but that she inadvertently held up a cracked mirror to a present already teetering on the brink of spiritual panic. The sound shifts here. Less eerie drone, more the tense rhythmic thrum of a detective scrutinizing evidence under a flickering bulb. The music of doubt isn't dismissive. It's the necessary counterpoint, the cold splash, forcing us to ask, are we interpreting a divine or infernal signal? Or are we just screaming into the void and mistaking the echo for prophecy? The ground remains unsteady. Skepticism doesn't dispel the shadows. It simply forces us to look harder at what might be casting them. The soul's apocalypse might be a myth, but the raw, trembling fear that it might be real, that's a force already shaping our world, Dixon or not. And that haunting echo, the power of belief in impending doom, might be the most terrifying. Prophecy of all, self-fulfilling in its relentless viral dread. Fear doesn't just sell, it builds its own reality. And we might be its willing architects, blueprints clutched in trembling hands, mistaking our own designs for destiny. The chimes. Toll. Not for the dead, but for the not yet born. The future selves we might still become. Dixon's prophecy hangs like a blade over 2025, but its true power isn't in predicting doom. It's in forcing a terrifying, glorious question. What if the apocalypse isn't fate, but a choice? What if her vision of crumbling souls and societal rot isn't an inevitable script, but a scorching wake-up call screamed across time? This is the pivot point, the razor's edge, where dread transforms into defiance. If the crisis is spiritual, a famine of meaning, a plague of distrust, a storm of karmic debt, then the antidote must be forged in the same fiery depths. The horsemen ride within us, but so do the architects. We are not passive victims awaiting prophecy's execution. We are gardeners in the shadow of the abyss, and the seeds we plant now will bloom in 2025's uncertain light. Forget stockpiling. Cans. The true survival kit is soul deep. Start with compassion, not the soft, fleeting kind, but the relentless, muscular empathy that bridges chasms of ideology. Imagine it, not just feeling another's pain, but acting as its salve. In a world priming for fracture, be the unexpected weld. Build community not on the shifting sand of shared fear, but on the bedrock of shared humanity. Micro-sanctuaries of trust, where the other becomes brother, where isolation drowns in the fierce warmth of belonging. This isn't naive idealism. It's spiritual trench warfare against the rot within. Heal one connection, mend one broken bridge, and you starve the horsemen of corruption. Next, hunt authentic meaning, like your soul depends on it, because it does. Cast off the hollow idols of consumption and curated digital selves. Dive into the messy, sacred work of discovering your why. Serve a cause larger than your comfort. Create beauty where ugliness encroaches. Anchor yourself in purpose so fierce, the vacuum of despair cannot gain purchase. This is how you silence the horsemen of desolation, not by ignoring the void, but by filling it with something luminous and true. Embrace radical responsibility. The karmic reckoning isn't mystical punishment, it's the physics of consequence. Every ethical choice, every refusal to exploit, every act of stewardship toward the planet, toward each other, toward your own spirit, is a brick laid in the levee against the coming flood. Own your shadow. Atone not through guilt, but through transformative action. This is how you divert the tide of retribution, by balancing the cosmic ledger, deed by deliberate deed. Finally, wage courageous dialogue. In the cacophony of shattering glass and angry crowds, dare to speak with, not at. Listen not to rebut, but to understand. Rebuild the vanished art of nuanced conversation, where truth isn't a weapon, but a shared exploration. This is the antidote to the poison of polarization, the slow, patient rewiring of societal trust. The thinning veil, it cuts both ways. Will it reveal chaos or collective awakening? That depends on what we amplify. Choose cynicism, fear, tribal rage. The veil tears and darkness floods in. Choose connection, integrity, relentless hope. The pure chime grows louder, piercing the static, revealing not an ending, but an unfolding. Dixon's 2025 prophecy isn't a death sentence scrawled in stars. It's a mirror held up to humanity's darkest potential and our brightest. The question isn't, will the prophecy come true? It's, which prophecy will we fulfill? Will we embody the inner apocalypse she sketched in shadows, souls adrift? Trust ash, meaning lost? Or will we become the counter-prophecy she never dared articulate? A species that stared into its own abyss and chose, fiercely, stubbornly, miraculously, to build lighthouses. The tools aren't hidden in mystic texts. They're here, in the warmth of a hand offered across a divide, in the integrity of a promise kept when no one watches, in the quiet courage of seeking truth over tribal comfort, in the defiant act of planting a tree whose shade you may never sit under. The pure chime sounds again, clearer now, resonant with a hope not naive but hard-won. It's the sound of a soul choosing its alignment. It's the sound of a future refusing to be foreclosed. The clock ticks toward 2025. What echoes will you add to the gathering storm, despair's hollow static, or the unwavering collective tone of humanity rebuilding its soul, note by courageous note? The apocalypse isn't coming, it's already here. And we hold the blueprints, not for bunkers, but for cathedrals of light, rising stone by compassionate stone from the very ruins we feared. Build before the final chime fades. Build like the future is listening. Build like it matters. Build like you are the prophecy. We've stared into the abyss Jeane Dixon prophesied for our souls, felt its chilling breath in our fractured now. Dive deeper into the static whispers. Around her predictions, but tread with eyes wide open, seek sources, question motives. Remember, fear is the oldest ghost in the machine. Skepticism disclaimer seamlessly woven in. And now, the haunting crescendo, that ticking clock you've felt in your bones since we began. Listen, it's morphing, slowing, deepening, sinking. The cold, mechanical countdown becomes a heartbeat. Your heartbeat. Thumping against the fragile wall of 2025, is it the pulse of dread or the drum of defiance? Hold that question, because next time we shift from the inner storm to the gathering tempest outside. Are today's climate infernos, collapsing economies, and war drums echoing in the headlines actually fulfilling Dixon's vision of physical catastrophe? Or are we desperately projecting doom onto chaos, turning weather into omen, conflict into prophecy? We'll dissect her predictions of tangible collapse, earthquake, fire, war against the cracked crystal ball of our current crises. Are we witnessing the first dominoes fall, or just the terrifying Rorschach test of a world on edge? The heartbeat swells, lub-dub, then fades, leaving you in resonant silence. Is it the sound of an ending or a beginning? Listen closely. The next tremor isn't just coming, it's already here, and it asks, victim or architect? The answer echoes in the dark. Until then, keep building.